I figure, before we get to the bad stuff, well, let's get our rose-tinted glasses and see what's up. So here are my top 5 best things, well, at least in the current alpha phase of Odyssey, but frankly, maybe in the whole thing. Now just don't screw it up! Number 5. Bookmark Menu. Now, with the new Galaxy Map UI, also Bookmark Menu is changed. And for the better, as now you can actually see how many bookmarks do you have left, as well as, well, whether or not they are for the squadron or yourself, and what category each bookmark goes into, like the bodies, systems, or even planetary objects. This categorization is wonderful, and makes for a relatively better viewing of what you've marked, rather than the whole big list that we have right now for Horizons. However, this particular thing is number 5 because of 2 specific things. First one is this, and the second one is no minus button there. So come on, fix it! Number 4, copy system button. Yes, a fucking button is my number 4. This simple of a feature can be, and indeed is, in my best list this high. Because guess what? A quality of life improvement, even such a simple looking thing like this, must be recognized, so that the others, much grander quality of life improvements also get a potential look in. And this is truly useful. How many times have you tried to copy and paste the nonsense that is the 3508D dash fuck off or something? This is gonna be very useful. Number 3, and not surprising, walking up to someone's ship or your own in the future is still a very beautiful and magical moment to have. Now I laugh, of course, but the fact is, when you get the first-person perspective, the same perspective you get from sitting in that fucking chair as outside of the ship, walking around it and almost touching it and groping it. You get something, well, frankly, that you can't get otherwise. With SRVs, we used to get almost the scale of it, but still, SRV is a massive thing, if you didn't know. So now, finally being able to actually go and look at the ship properly and just sort of poke every corner of it or look at every little thing about it. That is wonderful. Though why this is number 3 is, well, obviously because we have no ship interiors, and this could have been hands down the best fucking thing throughout the Odyssey. But no, because now ships are just simply boxes that we can walk around in, well, it's still impressive, but number 3. Number 2. And speaking of walking, I would actually put walking as this illustrious number 2 spot. The mechanics, the feel of it actually is surprisingly smooth, if you will. When you first start walking in alpha, the interesting thing about the mechanics of movement was that I described it at the time as soft. The acceleration left and right or changing direction was quite soft. I mean, it's kind of hard to describe in words exactly the details of it without having, specific numbers of acceleration, blah blah blah, and turbo nerding this thing. But the point is, throughout my time playing all sorts of first-person shooters, I've felt all kinds of mechanics within the game and even created my own. So, generally speaking, every game has a slight nuance on how they handle your player movement or each input. And I'm happy to say that Odyssey has surprisingly decent walking. You don't feel like none of the buttons, whenever you press them, don't fight against your will. It just decides and moves in that direction with a relatively nice and smooth movement. There's no janky randomness or quirky little bumps here and there on collisions as well, unlike some other examples. And by no means it's perfect, because left to right seems a bit slower than forward or backward. Then sprinting also feels a bit more grippy, if you will, in a way you don't want it to be. But overall, again, it's pretty decent and, frankly speaking, pretty comfortable to use, surprisingly. And number 1, the lighting and graphical improvements. Of course. Pretty much everything that needs to exist from the first-person perspective has to be changed for a better texture, better quality polygon, model and whatnot else. That was expected, but frankly speaking, from the trailers, it was sort of almost understated how detailed it got. Of course, the level of detail and attention to it has been quite impressive, so has been lighting as well. It's nice to see Elite Dangerous get sort of a facelift. I mean, it still looks like maybe 2014 game, and hey, they're trying their best and I can't fault them for it. In fact, I'm praising them. One thing I'm more happy about is the lighting, of course, because that makes the shadows just so wonderfully detailed and sort of precise, which makes for some interesting shadow play, if you will. But even that aside, of course, it's nice to see more detailed textures and a bit more detailed environments all around. After all, that was one of the big things in early 2010s. Just pump graphics and nothing more. However, if there is one criticism I could lay upon this particular topic, then that would be that everything feels to be designed by a single artist. By which I mean that everything has rolled off edges, and that repeats itself in literally everything. It's just that it's singular tone of design that I'm referring to. However, Elite is a one-to-one galaxy of just galaxy, right? So there would be just plenty of variations and iterations of how people build shelter. Not just one person just constantly pumps it out, right? So that's kind of unrealistic. However, knowing the game's limitations, I'm not gonna fault them too much for. However, I mean, you can take a little bit more effort, right? But that's about it on my top 5 best things for at least this phase of the alpha. However, I think that the top 2 won't really change and the other ones probably will be maybe swapped out once or twice, but we'll have to see. However, if you want to support the nonsense that I get up to and making these videos and so on and so forth, do check out the Patreon and other useful links down below. Other than that, I'll be seeing you around and, well, I suppose it's time for the top 5 worst. Oh my!